Hey there, it's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol. That's wavetables.lol, home of KRC Mathwaves, my gigantic, enormous collection of single-cycle waveforms and wavetables for all sorts of modern synthesizers. And I have a few things to talk about today. This is kind of a grab bag viewer mail episode of whatever this show is called. And so I even have notes so I don't forget to talk about something. We'll talk about my shirt. Somebody asked a question about analog sounding wavetables. And there's some new plugins that dropped this week that are super interesting that I did not know about. And then there's some new stuff in KRC Mathwaves that I've just added that's a little bit different. It's a set of samples. And so we'll talk about all of this stuff. So one thing we're going to get into sounds like this, which I think this is a very analog synthy sound. And we're also hearing some of these new plugins that I'm going to talk about. And the cool thing about them is nominally they are free. Okay, where should we begin? Well, I've been getting out a bit to different neighborhoods in San Francisco where I live. And you might have read lots of stories. Here we call them the San Francisco doom loop stories about like how crappy the city is. It's not. It's like one of my favorite places in the entire world. And San Francisco is getting like really cool again. So like 2 weekends ago, my wife and I went out to the Castro where we hadn't been in a while and like had a great brunch and did some like interesting and crazy shopping, including she got a cowboy hat that's like a disco ball. It has like, it's like legit. It's like a legit mirror ball, but it's a cowboy hat. It weighs, like a ton, but it's like, that's one of those things, like, how can you pass that up, right? And then this last weekend, we went out to North Beach, which is, kind of the Italian section. It's also where all the beats used to hang out and stuff. And there's a bunch of new stores. Excuse me, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer and whatever content. And grab yourself a beverage. You can't do this sort of thing without a beverage. Now, there are a bunch of cool stores kind of around Grant and Green in San Francisco. And one of them, I have to pull up my camera because I can't see if I'm holding this in the right place. There's this new store that had just opened up, like on Friday. We went in on Saturday, and it's called Happy House. And Happy House is billed as a psychedelic general store. And so they had like all sorts of really interesting like tchotchkes and gigas, but also this awesome shirt. And yeah, I do like music that sounds like shit. And like I was like, I have to have this shirt. I had originally spotted a sticker that said that, and I have my small laptop, which I actually created a lot of KRC Mathwaves on, at least the less processor intensive stuff. I keep claiming I'm going to put cool stickers on it, and I never put stickers on it. So it's a very boring laptop at this point. But anyway, I passed up the sticker, got the shirt, and it turns out that the shirt, here, we'll talk about Happy House real quick. I don't think their website is up, but they have an Instagram. It's at Happy House SF. Check it out. So if you'd like to get one of these shirts, I bet you could call them, and I bet you could get one. But then I had to do some digging around, and I was like, where did this come from exactly? And now I thought it was funny, right? Because, I'm kind of a sound designer and synthesizer programmer. And so, right, a lot of the stuff we're going to do, not this sound, but a lot of the stuff in the intermediate time sounds like shit. And then also, I like things like 80s industrial music, and that music kind of intentionally sounds like shit. But this shirt is from a thing called Dollar Country. And so apparently Dollar Country is like a podcast and this site that is all about like acetate records. So like acetate country records. So, dollar country music. Very interesting. There's a whole rat hole that you could dive into here. But anyway, They also have, let's see, there's their store. They have a store on Big Cartel, and you can get the I Like Music That Sounds Like Shit shirt. Now, I have to tell you, while you could go and buy this here, I think it was cheaper at Happy House. So, look them up. If you're in San Francisco, they're at Grant and Green. Really lovely couple of young women that run that store. All right, so there's my stories about San Francisco. Let's get into, and we're to get a cool shirt. Let's get into, what do we want to get into? Let's get into some viewer mail. So, Sanausta 3789 wrote in response to my physical modeling synthesis in Dawson Myth video. That's my most previous video. There'll be a link up here someday. And they ask, I bought the pack a while ago, which they mean KRC Mathwaves. You can get your own copy for $29 at wavetables.lol. That's wavetables.lol. Is it okay to drop request? Yes, Sanausta, it is. I would love to have wavetables that are imitating the analog realm. It doesn't need to be a specific hardware unit or something, but more in general. So wavetables that sound analog with the qualities of those, but more complex waveforms that are possible in the digital space, if that makes sense. You have more knowledge than me. I hope you know what I mean with analog sounding. Or maybe imitating a Juno or Korg with a twist of your own ideas. Love your work. Will tell my buddies to support and buy your wavetables. Cool channel too. Well, thank you for that effusive praise. Now, what I wrote back to Sanausta, and I promised that I would do a little video, is that when we're thinking about what makes a synth analog sounding, that's actually at above the oscillator level. So to get nerdly for a minute about how wavetables work, right? So wavetables are a series of single cycle waveforms, right, that we can interpolate through. And those waveforms are reproduced exactly as they are. And so things that we associate with analog synths, like small drifts in the filter cutoff response, small imperfections in pitch, are things that we can't model those at the wavetable level. It's up to us as patch creators, as synthesizer programmers, to incorporate those ideas into our patches. And so I think, I'm being nice to myself because, why would I be mean? I think this is a very analog sounding patch, and I'll show you some kind of tips and tricks that we can get to get this sort of analog sound, which a lot of times just means that there are pitch imperfections. We'll look at some detuning tricks, and then also in a lot of analog synthesizers, especially older ones that have voltage controlled oscillators, those oscillators may not restart at the same phase all the time, and so that kind of the random phasing that a voice might have can be an important way to do this. So this thing I have labeled analog synth is anything but. It is in fact our old friend. That's not what I was trying to click. Thank you, Keith. Is our old friend Korg Modwave. And you might have noticed one other thing too. I've got my main reverb off, and there's a different reverb. We will get into that. In fact, before we dive into Modwave for a hot second, let's just turn off the rest of my chain. What's going on here? Okay, so this is the raw sound. And I don't know why I'm playing that today. I feel like playing that. I also feel like playing this. That I'm gonna make a banging hit EDM record out of that. Okay? I know you doubt me, but that's what I'm gonna do. Let's go turn our overb back on. So this is a very simple patch. It's a one-layer patch. It's got 2 oscillators in it. And what I'm using, another thing I had said to the person who wrote in was have you checked out my more recent wavetables? So for example, the ones that are in the basic mix collection. So there's a whole video about those. There'll be a link somewhere eventually. And so what these do is they take two different basic synthesis waveforms and they kind of morph between them. So they're kind of these hybrid combinations, but also they squeeze the waveforms together and we get some interesting resonances and stuff. The effect, I didn't actually say this in my video that was specifically about these, but the effect is a little bit like oscillator sync actually, but it's only happening in part of the waveform. And this creates kind of interesting resonance changes that they can kind of make our filter sound different, right? It sounds like there's multiple types of resonance changes that are happening, and they're also the basic synthesis waveforms, just kind of mashed together. So like this is a good starting place for something that's analog-like. So I've got one of these basic mix wavetables in oscillator 1, and this one would be found under KRC base mix FP res. So that's where changing the frequency and the position of the way we mash these waveforms together, and then it also has this resonant character where we're actually going up a couple of octaves as we transition over the wavetable. So this is a sawtooth wave that transitions to a square that it eventually hits a base frequency of 2. If we were to take one of these other ones, like saw to square, that goes from 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, you'll hear a louder kind of resonant effect. Here, I'll just play. Okay, that's with the 1 to 2. Here's the 1 to 3. You hear that? That's the resonance I'm talking about, and then kind of at max. All right, so I'm going to dial that back down to here. So that's what's going on in oscillator 1. In oscillator 2, in KRC Mathwaves Volume 4, this is when I started revisiting the basic synthesis waveforms. There is a waveform called polysaws, and so this is a sawtooth wave. Let's just go to the collection. If you have KRC Mathwaves installed in your mod wave, you will have a collection that's called KRC Volume, there we go, KRC Math Volume 4. And so I did these variations on the sawtooth wave where rather than just having a linear ramp, like we had different types of ramps. So like, let's look at saws that are in here. So there's like an exponential ramp saw, a logarithmic ramp saw, and a polynomial ramp saw. And you see there are subtle changes in this wave across the wavetable. And so I'm just going to undo my messing about. And so this waveform changes subtly across the wavetable. And so to my mind, if you're going to model like something, like analogy in a wavetable, this is exactly what I do. And so that was one of the principles here, because you will find, like if you're working with various kinds of modular gear, like some things that are, waveform generators, they're not a perfect linear ramp. The ramp of the sawtooth will have different shapes. And it might have different shapes under different conditions. And so this is a very subtle way that we can, if we modulate this, we can get kind of, what I would call more analog sounding or more slightly varied variations in each note that we play. So let me go through, I will go through some of these specific modulations, and I'm a little verklempt. I'm so sorry. My post-production process takes out all the noise and my annoying mouth pops and stuff for the most part. Thank you, Izotope RX, it's like my best friend. Okay. So let's start. Let's just take this patch and let's undo some of the modulations. So let's see, I'm going to undo this. Double click, Keith. All right, I'm going to do that. And then over here, what do I have going on? In position, we've got some modulation here. Got some modulation here. We've got modulation on phase. Now, this is going to have a distinctly different sound. Let's call this, let's give it increment 5. Now help me remember that I saved that under 5. Okay, so this should have a little different sound. Right? So there's kind of less going on there, right? Interesting. Now, this might sit better in a mix. I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. Let's just go back really quick to version 3. It's a lot more rich. There's a lot more going on, right? So, okay, what are some of these specific modulations that we might do? So one of the first ones is that right now, all of our notes, both these waveforms are starting with the same phase, okay? And this is kind of arbitrary. And you can see I've got it dialed down to basically to max negative for both of them at the current moment. But you can hear that if we change the phase of one of these, and you need headphones for everything I'm going to do today, okay? Or good monitors. You can hear this makes a timbral difference. Right? There's different frequencies that are being accentuated and different frequencies that are getting nulled. And so, in fact, if I were to modulate, let's just take this phase. You heard what I was doing manually. Like, we could take this phase and we could modulate it with an LFO, right? Like, let's go grab, oh, it looks like the amp LFO is going nuts. So let's go grab amp LFO. Where are you, amp LFO? Here. And we will modulate position phase pretty wildly. Now that's a little bit unpleasant. And is that a ramp? It's not really supposed to be a ramp. Let's pick another one. Let's do generators. Let's do the filter LFO. You can hear that. It almost sounds like pulse width modulation, right? With a saw. Or sorry, with a square wave. Now that in itself actually is kind of interesting. It gives us a fat sound. You know, when people describe the fat sound, what they're really talking about are these differences like in phase and differences in tuning. And by randomizing them, we can kind of get to more of this analog feel. But this is pretty cool. I don't really want to use that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to modulate phase randomly, okay, at node on for each of these oscillators so that they always have a different phase relationship. Now they're going to retain the basic timbre of the patch, but it's always going to be a little different. This is as if the oscillators were free running, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, having picked my start position for the wavetable, I'm going to use, this is actually new in more recent versions of Korg Modwave. We have a node on random, and there's actually 4 of them. There are 2 that are positive going and 2 that are bipolar. They go both positive and negative. It doesn't mean that they need therapy or medication. Being bipolar is good if you're a modulator. And so those are under generators. So there's random 1+. So this is a random value selected at node on that goes positive. And I've got it set up here to modulate position. And so we can just move the intensity of this like all the way up, actually. Like, so that's a full 360 on the phase. And now you can see from the visualizer here that this always gets, each note gets a random phase for that. So then let's go and do the same thing with oscillator 1. So I've put my phase all the way down here at the lowest position, and then I'm going to modulate with random 2. So this will be a distinctly different random value from from random 1, right? And now each of my waveforms, go over here into play mode. You see how each of, oh, and of course I don't have myself backward today because I wanted you to read the shirt. You'll see that for each node on, the waveforms begin at a different phase. And this already creates a different sound. And so it's more the sound of a free-running oscillator. The next thing that I would do, and I did not turn this off, but actually, let's not do that yet. The second thing I would do, actually, is, and I did not turn this off either, is that in the init patch, right, the tuning of these oscillators would be the same, right? So here. But I can create like a nice detuning effect, right, by shifting one up several cents. So that's 7 cents up. And then I take the other oscillator and I'm going to move it 7 cents down. So these always have slightly different tuning. And that gets us even more of that effect. And then another thing that we can do is, use unison, right? And so unison will add more voices and with a selectable detune. Now, another thing you can do that's kind of interesting, you can also randomly modulate the detune parameter. And I think this actually really helps sell the effect. So like, actually, let's say we had our detune like kind of down a bit, right? And we're not randomly modulating it. It sounds like this. But an effect that I find pretty nice is to turn this detune up a little bit, and then we're going to modulate it with one of these bipolar randoms. So this is random 3, it goes plus and minus, and I can just dial in just a little bit of change there. And so this is very, very much like giving us an unpredictable pitch instability. Now, the other thing we can do in ModWave, I would normally have to set up, in most other synthesizers, I'd have to set up a specific modulation for this. But under program setup, so we're under ARPAN setup, program setup, here's your master pitch, right? Where you can transpose, what octave this plays in and stuff. We can hit the 0 button, Keith. Right, we could transpose up by semitones, but there's also, zero that out. There's also a random pitch. So at note on, so before we had the note on modifiers, this was the only way to like randomize the pitch. But you can randomize the pitch for every single note by some small amount, and an amount kind of in the range of like 3 to 5 cents is going to give us like, you don't even hear it so much, but every single note, even if it's the same note, they have a slightly different pitch, and so it's super rich now. Other things that are going on here. These basic mix waveforms, some of them, like this one, the sawdust square, we can do PWM style stuff with them by like mildly modulating the position. Okay, so you see that I've got my OS1 LFO connected to position here with a very small modulation. And so that's what's keeping this waveform moving. So when we first hit the note, actually I guess I removed the envelope from this. Like, I want it to do the resonance thing, right? So now we're traversing the wavetable, but when it reaches the end of the envelope, it doesn't stop moving. It has this nice little PWM effect on it. If we don't have that, see, the waveform moves, and then we hear distinctly that it has stopped moving. And so we can keep that in motion, by using an LFO on it. There we go. And that's a lot more pleasing, right? I mean, it sounds there's a lot like going on in this patch now. Very, very pretty stuff. And so if we were to go back, let's just save this. Let's overwrite that. Let's go back to our inspiration patch here. We're definitely back in the zone. Now, I think another thing I'd originally had on this, oh yeah, is so I'm going to randomly select a starting position for oscillator 2 here. So again, I'm using a random 3 plus minus, and we're just gonna like have a small modulation on that so that it starts in slightly different positions, and those positions they're like slightly different. It's like morphing from this kind of more linear ramp sawtooth wave to a more polynomial ramp sawtooth wave. And so that gives us these little subtle differences. Of course, our choice of effects is important as well. You know, like putting chorus on things is going to help them. There it is off. Here it is on. You know, that's going to really help. An appropriate reverb, right, in my main effects is going to help really sell that sound. And I've got it set here to something that sounds a little bit like an 80s reverb. It's not as grainy. Overb is a beautiful effect. But that brings us to new plugins. Anyway, I hope for anybody who's like, hey, how can I make a sound more fat? Or like, how can we emulate, you know, more of an analog sound? Those are some ideas to try, okay? So we're going to move on to plugins. But first I'm going to take a break, because how long have I been going? I don't know. It's like, oh, geez. Sorry, Infinity Mirror. 27 minutes. So yeah, it's definitely time to take a short break. So go refresh your cocktail, and then we'll talk about the other things that are on my list of things to talk about. So, you know, it's really hard to keep up with like everything that's going on in like audio and synthesizers. You know, and the mainstream, turn off my main reverb. And you know, the mainstream synthfluencers and, you know, GearTube can only take you so far. I was very pleased this week when the YouTube algorithm put a video in front of me about a set of awesome VST plugins that I had never heard of. So these are called AirWindows, and let's see, where is AirWindows? AirWindows, where did you go? AirWindows, let's go to, are we at the home page yet? Sorry, I'm really well prepared, huh? So at airwindows.com, this is a set of about 400, essentially open source. They are provided nominally for free for anyone who wants to download them, but you can support the creator, a fellow named Chris, who's very interesting, is probably even more audio nerdly than me, if you can believe that, and very deep into DSP. And just the short review on these is these are awesome. And the breakthrough here this week is he announced AirWindows Consolidated, which takes all of those 400 plugins, packages them in like one installer, and they're available as VST and also Clap, which is Clever Audio Plugin, which I'm not really familiar with, like how different that is from VST, but a lot of people seem to like it. He is also related to the community that develops the Surge XT wavetable synthesizer. Here comes a plug. Note that I support Surge XT and Bitwig by distributing my wavetables from wavetables.lol, KRC Mathwaves, just $29. Go get it today. By distributing them in the .wt wavetable format that's used in Surge and in Bitwig. Now, on to Airwaves Consolidated. So there's a link right here. Consolidated plugin is here. It'll take you to his GitHub, and you've got the Apple installers, you got Linux installers, you got the Windows 60-bit, Windows 64-bit installer, which is what I'm using. Like this installer, for whatever reason, this is just like 7.6 megabytes. I don't know if it actually pings the internet when it installs, but these are very lightweight, but they're incredible sounding. Here is one. So when you install this, you get, look at this. So like, it's so complicated. Like there's so many different plugins, like in all of these different categories. Look at this. It's nuts. And like a lot of them are excellent. And some of them are very, very specific, but there's like everything here from like effects to like EQs, like mastering types of stuff, you know, channel types of stuff. There are console emulations. There are some great sounding reverbs. Um, and so you can filter it by like, here are the basic plugins that are like easier to get to grips with, or you can say, hey, just show me everything, right? And then you can also sort them. Oh, it has like dark mode, which is kind of cool, by the way. You can sort them alphabetically or by uh, Chris order, which is kind of how Chris ranks the plugins in terms of like their quality and their usefulness. So, for example, there's things like a tape emulation that I think is fantastic and is easily as good. And there's a bunch of variations on it. It's easily as good as like anything you get from UAD. Like, I'm a person who's like spent a lot of money with UA audio, Universal Audio. And like I like their hardware interfaces and I like their software. But like these like stripped down interface plugins, that's another concept here. It's like he doesn't waste like a lot of time and he doesn't waste like a lot of memory like giving these things fancy interfaces. They have these very simple like kind of dial-based interfaces, and just shut up and like let's hear what one sounds like. So here is our sound we were working with before. And here's this to tape plugin, which is like a tape emulation. And you see I've got like there's some like head bump going on there. There's a little more bass now. And there's a little bit of like a high pass roll off. It's a killer tape emulation. It's kind of just a generic like make things sound better, which is pretty cool. There are a whole bunch of reverbs. Actually, this one blows my mind. I think when you first put the AirWindows Consolidated on a track, I think it selects this thing called Galactic. So if you're into things like Valhalla Supermassive or something, you might like this. Like, listen to what this does. Oops, it's not on. He said, listen, he said. It's fully wet. I mean, our patch like just turned into a string ensemble. Like, this is beautiful, even with the default settings. And of course, you know, you would typically have this as a send, right? I'm using it as an insert here. But now that's like super long, right? But it's beautiful sounding. There's variations on it. There is an emulation of Berkasti Cathedral. It just has one control, which is the wetness. Like, listen to that tail. Wow, right? Just like it's just freaking fantastic. Let's take what did I have this on before? I don't know what I had this on before. I'm gonna undo something. Let's see. Undo. What was this on? It wasn't. Was it on Galactic? Oh no, it was on the nonlinear one. We gotta go back one more. Come on. Don't let me down, Bitwig. Okay, this one I like. This one reminded me a lot of kind of some 80s hardware units. I thought it matched well with kind of the, hey, let's make something sound analog kind of feel. Okay, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Basically, just go get this right now and install it. The other thing that's really cool, you can see there's this documentation pane over here, and it has like the original blog post from like when he introduced the effect and like what it's about. It gives you tips for using it. One thing that I don't know if this is a Bitwig problem. I am using Bitwig 5.2 Beta 1 right here, and I don't see a way to save my presets, and there's not presets. So I'm not sure what's up with that, because it seems like there are supposed to be presets, and it seems like you should be able to save presets. I don't know if that's really an issue with the current build of AirWaves Consolidated or not. Anyway, they tend to have a very refined and reified, set of controls, and so it's not really a big deal to dial in what you want. But there's really cool stuff like this thing called Seriously is an extreme stereo expander. And so you can hear, I mean, if you've got phones or good if you got phones or good monitors on, let's listen to it without it. This is gonna take like that reverb field and also the patch itself and like make it huge stereo. I love that effect. Like there's a thing called Cosmos that's a plugin that I've used in the past that does the stereo widening trick. This one's crazy. It's actually based on like a Hughes audio processor. Anyway, you can learn all about that in the info pane for all these things. And then what was the next thing that I put on here? Oh, so this is kind of optional, but there's all these like console emulations. So this is kind of funny. I don't. He calls it the Quad 8. So it's like it's like a model of maybe like a console that doesn't really exist. But maybe that's a real console. I don't know. It has a very nice effect. Again, you might put this on a bus or something, right? But you know, it's got kind of a unique sounding EQ. We'll turn that one off. Let's see what else. Like again, like it's incredible, right? Especially since there's you know, you could get it for free. Now, I would suggest that if you use these things, oh, and then I did put another tape emulator on here, just to, we're almost using it like a maximizer. I mean, there you go, right? There's my 80s record, man. You know, that's with the console emulation back on. Anyway, really fantastic. So many interesting things, and some of them are really just kind of components, you know, so some of them are just like, okay, this is the MIDI cue from this console emulation. So you can just get the parts that you want. You can also see that they're like very low on CPU. Like, you know, this is not using much more CPU than ModWave Native. Okay, so that's really excellent. Go get these. I can't believe I didn't know about those before. Another thing I did maybe about a week or two back is I did do some software upgrading. And, well, one, I was kind of many versions back on Vegas, which I used, no hate, which I use for a lot of my video editing. I mean, of course, I have Premiere as well. I don't like the interface to Premiere. I mean, what is up with Adobe and their interfaces? So, oh, and now I've got sirens. Speaking of the San Francisco death spiral doom loop, what is going on? Is everything on fire? No, I just live near a fire station. So I upgraded Vegas because there was a great kind of springtime special. I don't know, it's like everyone's got a Mother's Day sale. Perfect Circuit has a Mother's Day sale. You can get like 10% off on stuff using, I think it's the discount code is MOM10. This is not a sponsored video. I sponsor my own videos. But by the way, if you want to buy something Perfect Circuit, like maybe like a Korg, what's the thing, the Poly Aftertouch thing? Korg Keystage? Like that coupon is good for a 10% discount on that? I don't know. It doesn't work on like all the things. It doesn't work on like the latest, like that Digitact Mark II, which is giving me a little bit of gas for reasons that don't really make any sense because I think it's still missing some features it needs. Anyway, so in addition to Vegas being on sale, so Izotope, you know, which is now owned by Native Instruments, like they have, what do they call them? Loyalty deals. So like if you log into your account and you own stuff previously, there's usually a loyalty deal, but there hadn't been a loyalty deal on things like RX10 Advanced. I was still on RX9. I was pleased to see that they have this little repair season deal going on, and there was a great loyalty deal to actually upgrade all the Izotope stuff I had to the complete collection, including RX10, and I think they're gonna honor RX11 for free when it comes out with that. So like for $400, I got all my Izotope stuff upgraded. And so if you're an Izotope user and you're like me, if you do, you know, dialogue editing or like, Professionally, I do a lot of webcast post production. And so it's all about dialogue isolate and like kind of recovery from like shitty compression and people who don't know how to stay on the mic and stuff like that, right? So it's an indispensable tool. And if you've been looking to get into something like RX10 Advanced, that's a great deal. All right, I just side plug about Izotope. Now, let's get into Mathwaves. There is something new in Mathwaves. Maybe we'll leave, I like these plugins so much, I'll just maybe leave them on there. There's a freebie in KRC Mathwaves. Now, none of this is in the free version, but if you were to buy KRC Mathwaves, or if you're a KRC Mathwaves owner, thank you very much for licensing KRC Mathwaves. It is greatly appreciated. It's just $29 at wavetables.lol. If you go to the product page, way down at the bottom, after all of the wavetable collections and stuff, and down in this section, that is the single cycle waveforms and multi-samples. I added a new section. This is called Varieties of Noise. And Varieties of Noise is a sample collection. It's about 52 megs or so of content that I never released before. And mostly what it is noise. So it's like noise recordings from different types of synthesizers processed in different ways through like different kinds of filters using my modular rig, etc. And I provide it both as the wave files. So you grab this one, Varieties of Noise wave version, compressed. It's about 45 megs. But there's my modular drum kit in there. I think it's the same one that I give away for free. But it's probably a little bit expanded. There are some single cycle waveforms that you can use that they're probably not actually in the original Mathwaves set. They were only available for Korg before. Then there's the Varieties of Noise, these noise recordings that have been processed in interesting ways. Some of them are unlooped, some of them are looped, so some of them are sustains. And then back to San Francisco, I had done some field recordings of a very interesting thing called the wave organ here in San Francisco. It's out in the marina past the yacht club. It's this crazy thing. I think it had something to do with the World's Fair when it was here, but it's this weird sculpture that has all these tubes that are connected to the water, and it doesn't literally make music, but it makes interesting sounds using these giant concrete tubes that amplify the sounds of the sea. And so as the tide comes in and out, it makes all these like weird gurgling noises. Anyway, it maybe be better to like hear some of it, right? But I'd never made those available before. So those are all in KRC Mathwaves, just kind of a little bonus. It's also my way of saying, hey, thanks everybody for like helping me get to like more than 500 subscribers. Hey, next stop 1,000, right? So like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. Let's get into Varieties of Noise a little bit. So I provide it as both a Korg compiled bank so that you can use it with ModWave or WaveState. They both work in the same way. It's like if you have these compiled banks that are sample banks for WaveState and ModWave, what you do is there's a user sample banks folder, and just anything that goes in this folder that you select will be read in and becomes available as a sample to you. And then they show up. Let's go get a slightly different patch. Let's see, where is Curve Magic? Curve Magic 110. Might help if I was in edit mode, layer A, so I can see what the hell's going on. Synthesis. Yeah. Okay, so this is just a single oscillator wavetable patch, right? But then if I change wavetable A, and this is all similar in WaveState, I think people who have WaveState like know how to do all this stuff. What'll happen when you select a waveform, you'll have a new collection, and it's called Varieties of Noise. And so there's a bunch of different stuff in here. So we'll play through it. So there's kind of some effect stuff. Actually, maybe we should turn off that giant reverb. It's really disguising what the sounds are. Let's see, airwaves, is this it? Let's see, 2-tape, we'll leave that on. But let's take off, here it is, that nonlinear reverb. Okay. I've also got effects on here, but this is a little less intense. All right. So all these kind of stuff, a lot of this stuff I made with modular synths. These are like little drum hit things. They all have little evocative names. So there's a whole bunch of those. There's a bunch of effects that are kind of cool. Some of them based on old video games. These were all created with modular analog synthesizers. Now your craft work. Let's see. And then there are the varieties of noise. There's hi-hats. There are multi-samples. So these are, I think these are the same multi-samples that are there are multi-samples of these in the Wavestate collection, I think, but they're just in here because they're kind of part of the same idea. These are waveforms that I created sort of before Mathwaves. These were created with hardcore and softcore. Just a software package that makes single cycle waveforms. Maybe I'll link to that. We should talk about that another time. Anyway, a bunch of neat tones. These are great for use in Wavestate. We're in Modwave right now. And then we've got, oh, see, these are more drum sounds. There are little transients as well. Let's see. Then all the stuff that's really varieties of noise is labeled as VON. So you could further filter varieties of noise by VON and just get these. There's all sorts of weird noises in here. All of these samples were made with processing noise in various ways. And some of them, like this one, are looped. And some of them also track the keyboard. Some are more effecty. So like, this is just a noise impulse, like run through Eventide's black hole reverb. There are sustained noises in here. Oh, there's also the breath sample from SQ80. This was actually extracted right from the ROM itself. So if you need to do you know, if you're in an 80s mood and you want that, this is the only good sound from the SQ80, by the way. If you're an SQ80 owner, I'm not being offensive, but like when you go back to like the original EPROMs, it's like all of the samples in there are crap and there's nothing special except for this. But then of course the architecture of that synthesizer turned it into something quite special, I would say. Different kinds of noise with weird spectra. So of course you could use this, right, for you know, various types of like drum programming or drum emulation, right? So like if we just made let's just make a simple decay envelope, shall we? And this might sound a little quiet. Watch me blow my ears out later. You know, and you could use different types of filters, right? That was a bad idea on this particular sound. All right, let's actually remove some of that. Bring our sustain back up. So kind of a, you know, caustic sort of noise sound. Anyway, lots of free stuff, fun stuff. To work with. And, you know, this really expands the palette from just kind of the more simple noise sources that you have in the sub noise oscillator in Modwave. Of course, you can also use these in the noise, which is really a sample oscillator, in Serum. You can use them, you put them in contact and make instruments out of them, you know, whatever. There are some kind of special ones that I really like, and I think I used these in my previous video about myth as a source. So these are actually noise that's played through a tuned resonator bank. So doing a lot of the same stuff I was doing in software, but this was using the Eventide H9 with some tuned resonators. And these samples called Enigma are called that because they don't have a well-defined pitch center. Like they can be tuned to a lot of different notes and just sort of arbitrary, but they have a really cool sound, and they remind me of, you know, every sample in like 90s romplers that was named, you know, Magic or something like that, right? They're that kind of sound. And there's 5 of these. They're very evocative, and like if you layer these with something that is tonal, it can be a very interesting effect. Maybe this should be more triangular. We're gonna give it a stronger fundamental, right? Anyway, you know, interesting, fun stuff. That's what I'm all about, right? Is exploration and experimentation. So enjoy these, KRC Mathwaves users. You know, maybe I will take this whole set and make it like truly available for free. When we hit 1,000 subscribers, maybe, huh? But by that point, everybody should have Mathwaves. And so, well, you'll already have this. All right, I don't feel like playing with noise right now, so I'm going to stop doing that. Anyway, we shouldn't leave this without looking at some of the wave organ sounds. So those are in Varieties of Noise. They're prefaced with WO. So alphabetically, we should find them at the bottom, just so you can hear what this thing sounds like if you've never heard it before. Let's turn off oscillator 2, shall we? It makes all these weird, resonant, noisy, watery sounds. So some of it's kind of tuned. I hope this doesn't, you know, make you need to pee. Very interesting stuff. Weird, right? Some of it's looped, some of it's not. Okay, that's what the wave organ sounds like. Really cool stuff. I don't know. Someone will find this useful for something, even if it's just effects. I like this one a lot. Or just tinkly water. Ambience. Welcome to Hearts of Space. This might sound cool through Galactic. Should we try that? Let's turn nonlinear one on. Spoopy and weird. Wait, okay, let's put this through Galactic. Wait. Reverbs. Galactic. Yeah. Anyway, cool stuff. All right. Now I'm done. See, I did this like after the other. So like things to do. Come to San Francisco, have a good time, check out the Wave Oregon, like buy cool t-shirts. Okay, we talked about how to make like a patch that's more analog sounding. I'm gonna think about this idea more like, are there other things that we might do besides the things I've already done that might be helpful in kind of analog sound emulation? Go get AirWindows right now. It's free. AirWindows.com, I think. AirWindows. Where did I put my AirWindows? Oh, it's over here. AirWindows.com. Go get it. And then, like, if you like this stuff or you use it in a release, pay Chris. He also has a Patreon, and his Patreon lets him like do all this insane plugin development, and this builds every week, and there's like apparently new stuff in it every week. If you're an Izotope user, go get Izotope on sale, and then hey, go get KRC Mathwaves, $29 at wavetables.lol, where you also get, in addition to like 150,000 amazing wavetables, you also get the Varieties of Noise exclusive sample collection, never before heard. All right, that's it for now. Thanks everybody. Like and subscribe. Hey, like. Do you like the viewer mail segment? If you ask me questions, I might answer them in a future video, okay? Or a lot of times I'll answer them in the comments. I really like interacting with people in the comments. You know, of course, if you're a dip, if you're like a dum-dum, like I'm going to roast you, but mostly I'm nice. I try to be nice. And hey, have a great day, okay? I will talk to you later.